Hi there. My name's David Huff, and I welcome you to Startling Confessions of a Recovered Addict. In this podcast, we will meet people, men and women in recovery, sharing their stories of hope and transformation. So I thank you for joining us. Welcome, folks, to this episode of Startling Confessions from a Recovered Addict. And in the first part of our segment, today we have Jill Krusch with us. Good morning, Jill. So nice to have you with us.
Good morning, David.
And she will be sharing her story. So, Jill, please tell us your startling confession.
Okay. Right now, right off the bat.
That's it.
Okay. So I think the biggest confession that would be valuable here is just sharing a bit of my actually pain journey that I'm a 50-year-old woman today, and I believe we all have our pain journeys that is actually where the seeds are planted to show up in life today. So part of my startling confession of a recovering drug addict, alcoholic, is that I came from a family that was really, really messy. And of course, on the outside, it looked pretty normal, with the exception that I had a mom and a stepdad, right? So it wasn't your traditional unit. But why that's relevant and part of my confession is that I absolutely felt so alone. And my mom would buy me my own little Coors. Remember, they used to be in the tomato juice can size, like little small ones. And we'd get a little 6-pack for me when we go to the liquor store, and they all got their own. And I was a 5-year-old walking into, the parties in 1975, already having a relationship with alcohol. I didn't drink and I didn't like the taste of it, but what I did have this relationship with a substance of like, oh, isn't that cute? Jill's so cute, ha ha ha. So I started cultivating part of my identity based on a lie. I didn't have this people in my life that could model like, oh, you're enough just as you are. That wasn't how it was for me. So it was already like this identification with a substance, with a personality. So when I finally at 13 years old decided to really do my own experimentation with alcohol, and as you hear so many people say like, oh, I knew right away. Yeah, I mean, it was such a rush of like, oh, I can do things I couldn't do before. And even though that very first time, major consequences. I mean, major consequences just internally, the shame and the guilt, and didn't come home and got grounded and, all these things. I couldn't wait to do it again. And my story, the confession is like, wow, I only drank and did drugs for 4 years. And in those 4 years, I was kicked out of school. I lived at the party houses versus having a home. But again, my home life was pretty tumultuous as well. And nobody intervened. I remember I had a high school counselor that said, are you a user? And I was like, what in the world does that mean? Of course I don't use people. Like, and she was asking if I was doing drugs. And I was like, oh. But the point that, the confession is pain, 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 pain. And all I wanted to do was get away from it. And I did that through various methods and various substances that ultimately ended with the dark night of the soul, where I lost my mind. And, but again, like I didn't have any structure. And once I was kicked out of school and just basically partied and stayed high and drunk every day for like 6 to 9 months, that would lead one to lose their mind. And
so let me ask you this. This is fascinating. 4 years was all it took, but how did you know you'd lost your mind?
Yeah, great question. I often still ask myself that. Okay, have I lost my mind? Am I in my senses? But the reality is, I was a punk rocker in
Mhm,
the 80s, 1987. I had a 12-inch jet black mohawk. And
mhm,
one of the indicators of losing my mind is that I shaved that off.
mm,
In fact, I shaved it off and I took everything around in my room that represented who I was. At this point, I went home and one of my best friends came over and I was in my closet with all these things in my room with me. And
mm.
I shaved all of my hair except for one little bang, which I don't, who knows what that was about. So that was some evidence that it wasn't okay. And basically what I remember, and again, I was a punk rocker, but I'd go back and forth in between different music genres because of how
Mhm,
I was raised too. But I just over-identified with Pink Floyd, The Wall.
mhm,
I, to this day, almost 34 years later, still don't listen to Pink Floyd
mhm,
because it's just too, um, it's too edgy for me. It doesn't
mhm,
bring joy. It brings like, oh wow, I remember that pain. And so that's how I knew. And I actually, was so how the Startling confession goes is one of my best friends came over and finally went to my mom and they're like, Jill is not okay. Like I
mhm,
hadn't left my room for days. And my mom was also a practicing alcoholic. She loved her wine. And so she just didn't have that awareness to figure out that I needed help
mhm,
either. So it was one of my friends that said, we've got to help Jill. And so I went to a 45-day treatment center.
mm.
And as a little 17-year-old peanut who at that point couldn't lie anymore,
Mhm,
I just didn't have it in me, mostly because I was not fully, integrated into my whole being. And so when they asked, like, how much are you drinking or using, there was no denial. It's just like, this is how it is. Isn't this what
mhm,
everybody does? And so I was really in a drug-induced psychosis for the
mm.
first weeks of treatment. And that's when my life changed. So I'll see if you have a question about, but that's the confession. It's dark chaos, really,
Mm.
I think just hung out in the depths of darkness for a while. And it was a dear friend
Mhm.
that said, let's just see what's going on with Jill.
Wow. I mean, it's so powerful. Dark, 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 pain, 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 and not really even aware that it wasn't okay.
Yeah.
And what a blessing that 45 days in a treatment center. Number one, that you got there, you got some help, people that knew what was going on, and it actually worked for you too. That's been almost 34 years. Is
Yeah.
that right?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Well, tell us what you do now.
Well, what I do now is a lot of what I did even way back then. And it's pretty basic. I love that you have that sign breathe behind you because
Mm,
I really did learn in 1987 in South Dakota, there was quite an experiential movement of therapists.
mm,
And I just happened to be very, very lucky where I was. You know, I don't know how often people would say they were lucky in South Dakota. And I was. I was around like some amazing people that taught me about breath, that taught me actually about movement and music
mm,
and certainly other modalities of recovery, which there's so many, and there's this design that could really help people. But for me, what I still do today is breath and movement and meditation
mm,
and working with body, mind, spirit, all of it. I mean, that's a big takeaway that I learned early on, that my system is pretty sensitive, hence the psychosis.
mhm,
So that's one thing that I'm like, substances really aren't in the game for me if I
mhm,
want to be this human being on this planet and be grounded and functioning. And I believe doing whatever I'm here to do. I can't do that if I don't do these things first.
mm. So recovery, well-being, it's awakening, transforming, whatever you call it, is much more for Jill than just not drinking, just not using.
Oh yeah.
Got you.
Yeah.
That
But
is a powerful story. Is there anything I kind of cut you off there. Was there something you wanted to go ahead and leave with our listeners?
well, I just say sometimes, I know lots of young people that struggle with this, and they think, oh, it's my right to party. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
21 yet. I haven't had a legal drink.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it's my right to exist on this planet in the glory of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the true right. And I think we get lost in the lies of what this whole journey is all about. But all bets are off for me when I put substances in my body that don't work well.
Mm-hmm.
And at this stage in the game, I mean, that's even certain foods, right? It's just like, how do I best take care of myself?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is there anything you practice on a regular basis, daily or yearly or monthly, that help you keep that attitude of how do I become the fullest Jill that I can become, and how do I stay on this great path?
Yeah. Well, I really do study and follow, some of the greats out there. And they say those first 50 minutes of our morning are the most impactful. And I spend those first 50 minutes of my morning plugging in with myself and something bigger than me.
Mm,
Pretty much hands down every day. And that's a practice I've had for at least the past 20 years and experimented in the years before. But what that really looks like, I have what's called a prayer chair. Some people would call it a meditation cushion or whatever, but there's a place where once I sit in that chair, my body knows what I'm doing.
mm,
My body knows I'm going to take some deep breaths. I also light a candle every single morning. Fire helps me remember I'm not alone and there's something bigger than me,
mm,
right? Regardless of faith,
mm,
regardless of any dogma that people or myself that I've traveled. Um, I'm part of a design for living that says there's a broad highway. And
mm.
in 34 years, I've certainly explored all the different aspects on that highway.
So that's beautiful. So did you say 50 or 15 minutes?
50,
50 minutes, the
50 minutes.
golden hour. Start your day every day making a connection to something greater than just Jill sitting here in this chair.
Yeah.
That, I love that. And I know our listeners will love that. And I think we'll talk a little bit about that golden time in the morning and our activity in the next segment of this podcast. So I really appreciate you bringing that up, and appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. Before I let you go, I know that you can be found. You're currently a therapist, and I think you specialize in alcohol and drug addiction. Is that correct?
That is trauma, codependency, all that goes with that.
Beautiful. Yeah, it just seems like they're all kind of tied in. And so you can be found at Krush, Krush, counseling.com, krushcounseling.com. And appreciate you taking time with us today. And I hope you have a beautiful day.
Thank you, David. You too, and to all the people that are listening.
Welcome to the second segment of our podcast today. And wow, thank you, Jill, for joining me today. What a story. And I love her practice, this 50 minutes in the morning where she gets herself on track. She makes her connection. And I want to expand on that a little bit and offer a suggestion of something that you might want to try out, a little practice in the morning that can make a huge difference. We heard how Jill talked about the difference it makes for her. And certainly, this has become such a habit for me to take advantage of these first several minutes after I wake up. This golden time in the morning where it can set the stage for whether the rest of my day is going to be selfish, afraid, worried about what you think of me, all this stuff which has a tendency to derail me no matter what's going on. And so I know my tendency when I wake up in the morning is to have a negative attitude. First thing, it's like something's not right. My body's aching. I've got a lot of stuff on my plate. I'm not prepared. There's so much work. I'll never get it done. And so one of the things that I do as part of this golden time, as soon as I get up, I'll just try to take a couple of deep breaths and think of one or two things I'm grateful for. Don't have to write them down, nothing. Just say to myself, I'm grateful I'm awake this morning. I'm grateful that I'm doing a podcast with Jill in a few hours. Anything that gets my mind out of those first negative thoughts when I wake up. And then my practice is to read a page or two from a book. So number one, as soon as I wake up, I'm aware by now that first thoughts are going to be negative right out of the box. And so boom, a couple of things that I'm grateful for. One or two things. I'm alive. I'm able to walk on my own power. The next thing, I read a page or two from a book that describes living by spiritual or moral principles that help me focus on the good, the inspiring, the beautiful, instead of those negative thoughts, which have a tendency to derail me. And then finally, I will set an intention for the day. What do I want the day to look like moving forward? Give myself a roadmap for a good day instead of a day wrapped around my own axle. And so my intention might be today I will be loving and kind. If I find myself on the negative side, I might say, today I will not complain, condemn, or criticize. Something that sets me on the path to where I want to go, what I want to experience, not what I don't want to experience. And then once I've set that intention, I like to sit quietly a few minutes. Jill talked about this, to make the connection. For me, make the connection within to this power, which I believe exists in each and every one of us, and the connection without. We are all connected. And that's as easy for me now as just being aware of my breathing. So I might sit with that for a few minutes. In my case, it's usually 20 minutes, but even as little as 2 or 3 minutes can make a huge difference. And just be aware of breathing in. I might even say it. I'm aware of breathing in. I'm aware of breathing out. I'm aware of breathing in. I'm aware of breathing out. Then I'll do that for several minutes. So once again, step one, when I wake up, be aware that I'm probably going to be thinking negative, and immediately think of one thing I'm grateful for, one or two things I'm grateful for. Then I go to a special place. It happens to be a bed in our upstairs. My cat usually joins me. He loves meditation and reading. And I'll read a page or two from a book. And I also get an email every day that I really enjoy and really helps me focus on the good, the inspiring, the beautiful. But it describes living by spiritual and moral principles. And Then I will set my intention for the day. Today, I will be loving and kind to all beings. And then I sit quietly, aware of breathing in and aware of breathing out. And that's a little practice that anyone can do. You don't have to do it for 50 minutes, but give it a try. See if it doesn't make a difference in the rest of your day. I hope you have a beautiful day, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.